Welcome, and thank you for joining The Logic of It All with your host, Reverend Gary Essex Sprunger.
Hello. Glad you are following and sitting in on the conversation. The last time we discussed a life that is righteous needs humility for having such a rich life. Our egos have to be held in check by the soul for goodness to exist in the world. There are examples of people without thinking risking their lives to protect or save another. And we see gigantic egos in national leaders like Putin invading Ukraine, leaving millions of souls dead, and others like the Ayatollah and Iran's terrorist agents who have taken life from untold numbers of sacred lives. The godless, the immoral are rampant in America and the world as well. Here, politicians exuding concern about the government confiscating and controlling guns as if that would solve the killing. Religious leaders are all too quiet about it's not guns that kill, it's the one holding the gun that's the sinful killer. A Christian reformation is needed to make known as absolute truth that human life is sacred. Human life is inviolate, not to be harmed by anyone in any way or any national leader. In Europe and the Mideast, people have been praying to God for help, protection, peace, end of the killing. It's a cry from souls not wanting to die and beg God to intervene and stop the massacre that is going on and on. But all those prayers are not being answered. That hardly means God doesn't care. But if you look at who God has created, that would be us, and who have given us so much capacity, logically, God could be intending for us to solve the injustices in the world, find ways to stop nations attacking other nations, and ways to stop the massacre of humans, Christians in Muslim-controlled countries in Africa. We certainly have the ability. God created our ability. And for all that God has given us, for thousands of years, we humans have been worshiping that power we have sensed that is beyond us. Our recommended Old Testament reading for this Sunday, September 7th, it's a most beautiful psalm describing the author's devotion to that power, that God that is in the writer's life. Psalm 139. We'll read verses 1 through 6 and then 13 through 18. O Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely. O Lord, you hem me in, behind and before. You have laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearful and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the most secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. How close God is to the writer of those words. You have searched me and know me. God knows his every move. Even before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Beautiful thoughts from some 3,000 years ago. Such closeness with God, who was there when the writer was formed in the womb, and throughout his life, each day was with God, as though each day was just for him and God. And in all the thoughts he had from God, more numerous than all the grains of sand. And God is not with him only during the day. When he awakes, he knows God has been with him. And he says, I am still with thee. He's still alive and with God. His words describe a following of God that was so natural for him, day and night, all his life. As my Brit friends would say, lovely. Hang on to those words, because next the lectionary suggested reading has a different view of following, as we learn from Luke chapter 14, verses 25 through 33. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and his sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And anyone who does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? For if he lays the foundation and is not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule him, saying, This fellow began to build and was not able to finish. Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Will he not first sit down and consider whether he's able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off, and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. Quite a difference between the psalmist following God and a person following Jesus. The harshness doesn't sound like Jesus, who said to his first fishermen disciples, Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. That is far more like camaraderie, a friendly relationship, rather than the demands we just read. The Gospel of Matthew was written maybe 20, 30 years earlier than Luke, and instead of using hate in chapter 10, Matthew says, He who loves father and mother more than me, not hate father or mother, but who loves father and mother more than me. Matthew doesn't use hate or mention wife, brother, or sister, and Matthew places his description of discipleship at a time when Jesus was sending out his apostles. Here in Luke, Jesus is addressing a large crowd that was following him. We must keep in mind that all New Testament scripture was written after the death of Jesus. So that is a factor in the writing of Matthew and Luke as we look into what we just read. So we must ask, are these the words of Jesus? A key to the answer could be in the directive, Whosoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. They all were aware of crucifixions, and a criminal carrying his own cross was a common sight, and it was not considered a voluntary martyrdom until the death of Jesus on the cross. A martyr carried the cross. So the use of the metaphor here, bear his own cross, had to have been written after the death of Jesus. So you have to think in terms, logically, that at the time this was written and included in both Matthew and in Luke, There had to have been those claiming to be followers of Jesus, and that they were not as devout as they should or could be. And if it wasn't Jesus teaching his disciples or his apostles about discipleship in Matthew, or the crowd in Luke whose words were these, they had to have been the words of someone familiar with the martyrdom deaths suffered by the apostles, who had gone in all directions to teach about Jesus after his death. So while this is an example of storytelling skill in narrating the teachings, there is some truth in the cost of discipleship that is evident today. There's evidence of evangelists, especially tele-evangelists, amassing fortunes from those who are seeking a relationship with Jesus and God. Not all evangelists, certainly, but the warning in Luke does apply to some. You have to give up everything, or you cannot be my disciple. As an aside, in the 1960s, George Zell was conducting the symphony orchestra in Cleveland, and the NBC-owned station in Cleveland broadcast the symphony live. The director for the broadcast had a vision. He wanted a certain shot showing through the arms of the bowing of the basses. And the only camera lens that could do that shot in focus all the way through was owned by a popular evangelist in Akron, Ohio. NBC could not justify owning such an expensive lens, so they rented it from the evangelist, who had better television equipment than the NBC O&O in Cleveland. It was a fantastic shot by the director, Roger Ailes, who was the CEO and founder of Fox News. Years later, there was an exposure of the wealth of the evangelist. There is a modicum of truth to what's required to be a disciple, especially selflessness and humility. And we must acknowledge that Jesus relied on some of those who followed him. They had means to feed him and his disciples and give them a place to stay. To give up everything is not logical. We know there have been those enclaves where the vow of poverty has been taken, and they depend on those who have means to support them, while being faithful followers at the same time. We need a Christian Reformation, because we read things in the Bible that are not what they seem. We need to know what is truth and what is descriptive interpretation by the storytellers, the unknown storytellers. So many of their stories have been accepted as at face value as truth. And much has been seen in the light of today's knowledge as being unbelievable. And far too many believing followers have unnecessarily left the faith out of discouragement and disbelief. To keep Christianity a vital faith, we need a clear understanding of what's been written. We need a Christian Reformation. The psalmist we read today in saying that God knows his words before they reach his tongue is in line with thinking today that logically the presence of God in the world is through his Holy Spirit, dwelling in each and every human soul. Right up here. We have the ability to do wondrous things for each other peoples, other nations. We have no need at all to be killing each other, to be praying for God to stop it from happening. Prayer should be that we would be strengthened to use our ability to stop the killing. We have the God-given ability to stop wars among nations that are driven by egos of leaders. When the president of this nation uses his power, we the voters have given him that power, and he uses just like we all have creator-given ability, he uses his creator-given ability to sit killing leaders down to find ways to peaceful existence. We have been given great ability by the Creator of us all, and we need to remember our closeness with our Creator, who, as the psalmist said, "You have created my inmost being." That's up here in our soul. God knows our words before they're on our tongue. May that come to mind when we're about to say something hurtful in anger to someone. Because as the psalmist said, "You are familiar with all my ways." Humbling, lovely. If you're following and want to know, next time, Psalm 78 and John chapter 3. Out of time, and the coffee's cold. So until next time, have a good rest of your day and sunshine tomorrow.
Thank you for following The Logic of It All and the Hope for a Christian Reformation. If you have followed since episode 1, you're welcome to the website, thelogicofitall.com. Join us again for much, much more in The Logic of It All.